Yo, what's going on? Picking things up from last time, after depleting the plus 25 fall, we go again the following day, this time queuing up the now plus 24 and running it back. In this episode, we'll slam through the remaining keys done on this set of affixes, and if you haven't already, drop a sub, leave a like, and enjoy. It's episode 9 on our road to Mythic Plus title. So last episode we really branched away from assassination, playing both sub and outlaw in several dungeons. But after going through a string of depletes in the last episode, I decided I wanted to swap back to Old Faithful, and hence we're back to playing Sin. This doesn't mean we're done with the other specs, but my idea was that even if Sin is kinda scuffed to play on Sanguine, or even in general, I know I can play it well, so I want to see how far I can take it. And we take it into the plus 24 fall, where we're now hitting the second boss. I've asked to be the second to spell, but my brain shuts down for a second because when I get the debuff, I forget to run in the light section, which kills our pally and healer as a result. Thankfully, we do have a combat res, so we pick up the priest and finish the fight. And believe it or not, that's the worst of it. We arrive at the final boss with like 13 minutes remaining, except we're short on count. So after killing the boss, we go on an adventure looking for one more trash pack. But because we have so much time, we eventually find something and complete the key. Our current best in this dungeon is a 2-chested 24, so timing this doesn't gain us any Mythic Plus score, but it does turn our keystone into a plus 25 Everbloom, where we wipe to the second boss because we don't have any kicks available for Toxic Bloom. I sent my kick on one of the bolts thinking the DK had an available interrupt, but it turns out this icon is actually a pet stun and not a kick. I don't know why Omni CD displays it under interrupts, but after this key I went into my settings and disabled it to at least prevent this misunderstanding from happening again. After wiping, we call GG's and somebody in my chat asks if I want to link up for some runs. So I pick up the DH tank and we send my now plus 24. And this run goes a lot smoother. We do have a few deaths on bosses 2 and 3, but we engage Yalnu with 7 minutes remaining. While this is a longer encounter, 7 minutes is plenty of time here. Except that during the first ad, our hunter goes down, and unfortunately those previous deaths to bosses 2 and 3 mean we don't have an available battle res. Then on the following ad, I inch too far forwards and eat the boss's frontal. And then the rest of our group rots out. So that's key, and rather than run back the 23, the tank and I instead managed to queue into a plus 26 fall. As per usual, we jump to the second boss, where I've clarified ahead of time to always be the second person dispelled, but then the following goes down.
No, second dispel.
What are we doing? I try to shadow step back to the boss, but then I run into an orb. Our evoker also goes down, but luckily we have 2 combat reses available. We pick the evoker and I back up and finish the fight. We have one more death during the dragon skip, but otherwise make our way through the rest of the dungeon cleanly, engaging Iridikron with 8 minutes remaining. Plenty of time to finish this boss. Right? This fight on Tyran is crazy long, and while we do manage to time the key, we do so with 10 seconds left. So a little close for comfort, but we got it done. And that's an upgrade for me by 2 keystone levels, which gets us 6 Mythic Plus score. It's not a lot because I have a 26 fall I've done on Fortified, but it still felt good getting a time on the board. Next, we queue into a plus 25 Waycrest, where we have a very sketchy Soulbound Goliath kill, and then proceed to engage Ral, where our tank runs out of melee range and we wipe. So we run it back, manage to kill the boss this time, but both the healer and I are dead by the time we finish the fight. I release thinking our Boomy will res the healer, and that it's probably quicker for me to run back than it is to wait for 2 full res casts. But our healer then also releases, and while the 2 of us run back, our tank pulls the maggots and witch in the kitchen, but without all 5 of us present, this pull does not go well. So we chained out of this pull a couple times before eventually getting through it. Next, we chain the Hounds and Thornshaper into the mini-boss, but this plan sort of backfires because the Hounds pretty much sanguine heal everything else back to full health. We then pull a Captain and Witch in, but this proves to be a little too ambitious as we end up missing a few kicks, which then wipes us. and this is partly my fault. I froze up when I saw 3 cast bars at the same time and didn't kick at all. And while I'm doing this voiceover several weeks in the future now from the time that I actually did this key, this was and probably still is the weakest part of my Mythic Plus game, which is that without prior knowledge or understanding of what I should be focused on interrupting or stopping, when faced with a decision like this, rather than be decisive and pick something, I tend to freeze up. Now, since I'm playing Assassination here, damage-wise, if I'm not on my cooldowns, it's not that punishing, but if I were playing Outlaw for example, and I stop using globals, it's especially bad. Anyways, at this point, we're out of time so we don't bother finishing, but the tank and I managed to queue into another plus 25 wake rest. And this time around, Soulbound Goliath goes down about equally as bad as the last run, but our mage is the last DPS alive and can blink all the Soul Thorns casts, meaning the 3 of them can finish the fight. Then this time, our tank stays in melee range of Ral, we use our kicks on the following trash packs, and time the key with 3 minutes remaining. This is exciting because we're approaching the 3300 mark. So let's take a look at my dungeon breakdown and see what we can upgrade. Alright, so my lowest Tyrant key is Atal Dazar? That's a little weird. Atal is definitely one of the easier keys in the dungeon pool. It's really just a last boss check. But you know what? That's good. It should be an easy dungeon to time, so we queue it up and land ourselves in a plus 25. On the first boss, our Evoker gets eaten by Razan a couple of times. Then we have a few more trash deaths, but we're going to jump to Volcal because just as we're about to phase, nobody kicks the boss and we end up wiping. So we run it back, kill the boss, and engage Yasma with 4 minutes left, which turns out to be not quite enough time. We don't have the damage, but it doesn't matter because the ads run into Yasma. So we hop back in LFG and queue into another 25 Atal, linking up with the tank from earlier. And I'm just gonna play this one out.
Four, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, Drew got beard. Bro. I don't know, do you win these? Is that a reset? I don't know, man.
Four, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Damn. Well.
So yeah, needless to say, we depleted the key. The monk and druid were clearly not messing around and dipped out real quick. And I could sit here and talk about how we still had time to finish the key and that them leaving doesn't make sense, but I mean, you know how the story goes. Next, I managed to queue into a plus 26 Dark Art, and here we'll jump to the first boss, because we end up losing our hunter to a leap followed by them standing in the ground stuff. It's hard to tell from my perspective, but I guess they're caught in a tight space. All good, we commit a battle res, but did you catch it? Here, I'll play it back. Our hunter immediately took the res from our tank and was instantly slapped by the boss's frontal. So now we're down a body, and without the hunter soaking the boss's leap, we slowly rot out. And that's key. So it's back to LFG, and this time back to Atal Dazar as we queue into a plus 26. We actually managed to have a deathless run up until we engage Yasma, and with 15% of the boss's health remaining, this happens.
First death. Holy shit. No way. Alright, we just take it the rest of the way. All boss. Holy shit. Oh my god. We got it done. Plus 15 rating. That's 3,300.
And we did it. It was a sketchy end, but timing that key gets us 15 score, bringing our total to 3,305. As you can see, I was pretty stoked to hit this mark, especially after having a bit of a rough patch earlier in the week, but we persevered, and it felt good being rewarded for that effort. That ends up being my final key for the day, but we're back at it later in the week, this time jumping into a plus 25 Dark Heart. We had a few oddball deaths throughout the key, but nothing major. Things only really spiral out of control on the final boss. However, we've done enough and the tank takes us home. We time the key and gain 4 Mythic Plus score. Next, we head into a 25 throne, but here we have some issues on the trash.
Fuck, dude. Oh, that's so tragic.
So we run it back, but the dogs plus caster pull proved to be a bit too challenging.
What the?
And I learned that apparently these mobs can snap down. Good to know, I guess. Afterwards, we queue into a plus 26 Blackrock Hold, and the tank immediately DCs.
Bro.
Thankfully, they do come back, and we head into the first pull, which proves to be a little tricky. I think I do a good job rotating through my stops, but it feels like we run dry pretty fast, as pretty much everyone except the tank goes down during this pull. We then have a couple more deaths during the mini boss, and a couple more during the real boss.
2, 3. Oh, fuck. We were too slow. Well, it's not the best start in the world for sure. All good.
So far it hasn't been pretty, and probably to no one's surprise, it continues to not be pretty. However, it is good enough as we finish the key with 15 deaths and a little over a minute remaining, getting us plus 3 score. I think it's pretty cool we managed to play this one out despite the rough start. Next, we find ourselves in a plus 25 rise. I go down to the lizard's incap because I'm a hair too slow getting there for the interrupt. Our priest then goes down soon after, but thankfully that's the last death we have for this first section of trash. Then during the first boss, our tank actually goes down. This was pretty scary, but I actually get crazy lucky here, because I'm slow hitting evasion, but it doesn't matter since the boss queues up its frontal right before it has a chance to melee me. And in this time, we're able to B-res our tank and finish the fight. I then die on the next trash pack because I forget to use tricks on the tank and get meleeed. After this death though, we cruise through Battlefield and Morchi before making our way to the last trash pack, where our healer gets meleeed on pull? This was very sketchy, but our Warlock makes a great decision and instantly sends a B-res to get them back up, and they're able to recover such that we get through the pull. We then engage Deus with 5.5 minutes remaining, which sounds like enough time, but this is a long fight, especially when I get clipped by a swirly. Our healer then dies during Infinite Corruption, followed later by our Warlock. Thankfully, even with these deaths, it is enough time, although just barely, and we complete the key, pushing our rating to 3,320. Hopping back into LFG, we then queue into a plus 26 Waycrest. For this run, we ran a route that had us shrouding up the stairs and into the first boss. This way, we can put Lust on cooldown ASAP, but still get the value of using it on a boss. It leads to a very fast first boss split, and once Lust comes back up, we take on Soulbound Goliath, where our Havoc Demon Hunter gets bullied on this fight as they get picked by Soul Thorns 4 times in a row, dying twice, but we finish off the boss and clear trash to Ral. Except then our tank hits Ral, causing the boss to use Consume All, killing off our group. So we run it back, clear through the trash, and engage Ral for real this time. When I get caught in an awkward overlap with a swirly on one side and the boss's frontal on the other. We have a battle res though, so my team gets me back up, but then later, I die in almost the exact same fashion. Kinda crazy how similar these two deaths were. Although on my second death, I did have Cloak available, so I did have an option out, but I didn't take it. After Ral, we have a few more deaths, but nothing major, and finish the key almost 3 minutes under with 14 deaths. This group was kinda blasting. I then queue into a plus 25 Everbloom, but this key bricks pretty fast, as our tank does a pretty huge chain pull, picking up 4 to 5 stingers in the process. These stingers then kill our healer, and shortly after our tank goes down and we wipe. A little while later then, our tank goes down once more, once again resulting in a wipe. The tank asks if that's key, and we all agree that we're probably out of luck at this point, so we end things there. I then link up with a couple friends to run another plus 25 Everbloom, and we actually end up having a super clean run with only 2 deaths. But, and I'm going to spoil things early, we miss the timer by 3 minutes. So the immediate question is, well, why? I think there are a few things here. The easiest answer is that the Sanguine affix in Everbloom is tough. Because there are so many trash mobs, Sanguine often does a lot of work in this dungeon, which adds to the dungeon timer. The next thing to point out, which both our tank and evoker brought up, is our damage. I can't speak for the other people in our group, but looking at my own gameplay, I definitely could have squeezed out more damage had I played things differently. Namely, there were several moments throughout this run where I didn't know whether to send my cooldowns or not, which led to multiple misuses of those cooldowns. And this leads to the final thing, which is how our tank pulled. I was not stoked about the way we were pulling mobs in this dungeon. The tank's style of pulling was chaining old packs into new packs without dropping combat. This is tough for me as Sin because I lose a lot of damage if I don't drop combat between pulls, since I can no longer re-stealth and AoE Garrote. I also felt like our tank would pull in ways I wouldn't expect or anticipate, which led to several situations where I was needlessly holding my cooldowns, or sending them at the wrong times. It's kind of difficult to show this, but when you play a dungeon over and over and over, you develop habits based on your experiences doing that dungeon. When you play with the same people, you can really specify and plan around these habits. So conversely, in a pug setting, when you're playing with different people, there will usually be some differences. So you, as a player, have to adapt your expectations and developed habits with what your group actually does, to best fit your role and succeed in the dungeon. So the point I'm getting at here is that it definitely felt like I was having to do a lot more adapting in this group than I would in the average pug Everbloom, which meant I didn't output as much damage as I would expect I'd be able to. Not to imply what we did and the way the tank pulled was inherently wrong, but this run and their feedback definitely got me thinking about playing Assassination in this dungeon. Was this just a one-off instance of me not being in sync with the tank, leading to my relatively lower damage profile? Did I play poorly and am overthinking it? Or maybe it's that this spec isn't great for this dungeon, or these affixes. While I wasn't happy the tank was doing a lot of chain pulling, I also understand why they do it. On Sanguine Week, if one trash mob heals a lot more than the other mobs, it's inefficient just hitting that one mob, so it makes sense to drag it into the next pull. If my damage profile doesn't support that style of play, maybe I should be playing something else. Anyways, next I jump into a plus 26 Darkheart Thicket. For this run, we're going to jump to the second boss, because I died to a Shattered Earth cast as I get caught in my global and wasn't able to get Feint off. We have B-res, so the druid gets me back up, but then later the mage also falls victim to not pressing a defensive and goes down. Immediately after, Oakhart summons the boys and I pull threat and die. I could have used tricks or evasion here to easily have lived, but I think I was a bit rattled after dying earlier in the fight. We didn't have another B-res, but I thought we might have been able to 3-man the rest of the fight and potentially still have a chance at timing, except the druid was pretty insistent that was not the case, so we don't bother trying, and that's key. And with that key, this week of Tyrannical comes to an end. That ends up being my final run done for this set of affixes, and with it, we're going to end the episode there. Be sure to tune in next week as we swap back to Fortified. We actually take a step away from pugging and begin playing with the same people, which is super exciting as we're able to push up our keys and work together towards timing them. You won't want to miss it. I'll catch you then. Thanks for watching. Oh my goodness, we're done. It was